All right, this will be the last part of our notes on imperialism and colonialism, and really we'll look at Africa, okay, quickly. Now, why did European powers go into Africa and colonize that area? Really because they wanted to increase trade, they needed natural resources, and they were extremely competitive. Okay, they were rivals with each other. They wanted to make sure that everyone was keeping pace, and that that nobody was getting ahead of somebody else. So France had a colony, Great Britain wanted one. Portugal got in the game, Britain did, Belgium did. They all had this sense of pride and nationalism and competition that they needed to have colonies in order to survive and use the resources contained within that continent. Okay, a big part of this is the Suez Canal, which is in present day um, Egypt, kind of between Egypt and Israel, and it's incredibly important in the development of Africa and the development of colonialism. And the British built this um, in Egypt, and really connects the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. So you have basically a shortcut to Africa, or to Asia, excuse me. You don't have to go around the whole Horn of Africa. You can go through the Mediterranean and then cut down into the Red Sea and head over to Asia that way. Um, the British built it because it was considered a lifeline to India, and later on China as well. Um, this canal is extremely important. It cut the travel time in half. It allowed goods to flow to and from Asia and Europe in an incredibly more efficient and effective way. Again, this is a canal built by the British in Egypt. Very similar, if you remember from the U.S. class, of a canal that was built in Panama by the United States. So the British build this and they control it, and run the canal, run the locks, all that stuff, even though it's on Egyptian soil, just like the United States controlled the Panama Canal when it was on Panamanian soil. Okay? Germany, away, the Kaiser, the leader of Germany, shied away from acquiring colonies. He thought it was a bunch of baloney, and really the justification right away was that he wanted to appease his citizenry. He wanted to make sure that people were elected in their limited republic there. They originally only had colonies in West Africa, like by the Ivory Coast and the Gold Coast, but they expanded into East Africa simply because um, people weren't taking it. Okay, so they go across the continent because other European countries were not taking that action. All right, this is important now. You guys will need to remember the Berlin Conference. Okay, the Berlin Conference is called by European leaders, and really it carves up Africa. Okay, so you had Germany and other countries making multiple claims to the same land in Africa. So a conference was called to settle those disputes and basically to set up colonial borders. Okay, and a big part of it is it recognized British and German claims in East Africa and a little bit in South Africa, but basically that these are European powers now carving up the African continent to make sure that no two countries have the same claim. So what does that do? Well, really prevents conflict. I mean, if you can set borders and people agree to those borders, then they're not going to fight over them. Okay. Um, a problem with this, and a problem that is repeated after really World War I in the Middle East, is that there's really no local input. There's no indigenous or tribal input into this. So the borders are drawn up arbitrarily. You're mixing tribes. You're increasing ethnic divisions and conflict, and all that. Now, because of this division, this the arbitrary nature in which the borders were drawn up, you have extremely diverse and really groups opposing each other on ethnic, linguistic, and territorial regions. So the borders were just drawn up without regard to any of that, and it's really created a lot of problems in present day Africa. Um, 1914, Ethiopia and Liberia are the only free countries in Africa. They're the only ones that were not colonized. Extra credit if you can tell me why they weren't. Okay. Now we'll look at a couple maps here real quick, and then we'll be done. Just to give you an idea of resources and important ports. So this is the Gold Coast of Africa. Okay, the Gold Coast here, there's just a incredible amount of that resource here. The Ivory Coast here, these were the big slave trading ports in West Africa, and you can look across and see the importance of controlling rivers. Okay, and you look at the different ports on here as well and why they are so incredibly important. Okay, water is an incredibly scarce and important resource. So is salt in this area as well. Here's Africa in 1914. We've seen that map. Okay, Ethiopia, Liberia, really the only two free countries. Here it is today. So you can look at and see the majority of, uh, present day countries that came out of this and the problems that you'd face. So you have this whole region here that was French West Africa that is now multiple countries. Um, that's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing just to divide up borders and things like that. So, what one of the big things you need to understand is that the idea of imperialism and colonialism and the actions taken by Europeans really changed the life of individuals on every continent, and it really altered the course of the world. So, all right, guys, thank you.